Hello, welcome to my session at Scottish Summit. We'll start again at 15. Hello, welcome to my session at Scottish Summit. I'm Ashley, and my session is called A Dyslexic and Dyspraxic Guide to Accessibility. I'm a dyslexic, dyspraxic, queer person, and my pronouns are they, them. In this session, I'm going to show you some of the accessibility tools I use and also talk a little bit about a slide from the slide deck of this presentation and just talk through some of the things you might want to think about when you're presenting data or information on a slide. So, first of all, I need to say thank you to our sponsors, who are ScriptRunner, DQ Global, Proximo 3, Redspire, Agilis, and Hitachi Solutions. Without them, this conference wouldn't be able to happen and certainly wouldn't be free. So thank you to them. So, who am I? As I said, my name is Ashley. I'm dyslexic, dyspraxic, and queer. I'm an aerospace engineering student at the University of Nottingham in my third year, and I run a blog at dyspraxicrogue.co.uk where I talk about disability difference, accessibility, and inclusivity, and how they should shape the world and how they shape the way I interact with the world. My Twitter is at dyspraxicrogue, and I, tweet occasionally. I'm hoping to get better at that. So, first of all, what is accessibility? Accessibility, for me, is it's about the way we make spaces, products, or content that is available to everyone, no matter who they are, no matter their disability, difference, from what society expects. And I leave it slightly broader like that because I know for me it's always helped that I see certain things as disabilities, I see certain things as differences, and I don't want to put accessibility in with disability because a lot of people don't identify with that word, even if other people with the same conditions or differences do. And who is it for? So accessibility is for everyone. It's not just about getting ideas that otherwise wouldn't be out there involved or maximizing your viewership on YouTube. It's also about helping anyone, because I know from people who I've seen who use certain accessibility tools, a lot of them don't have anything different with them, or there isn't a condition that we can point to be like, oh, this is the reason. It's just, it helps them even as a person who that tool isn't designed for. Like, maybe you're someone who has to sit at a screen for hundreds of hours a day, and a screen reader might help you do that extra bit of reading because you're already getting eye strain from the computer. That's not a disability. That's not really a difference. That's just computers can give you eye strain, and using a tool to help you get around that. And that's why I say accessibility is for everyone, because it really helps when you see it that way. The first thing I'm going to do, though, in this presentation is actually look at a slide that we were given as speakers at Scottish Summit. And there's 3 things that they could change with it. There's 2 that I think, important issues, and there's one which is more of it would be nice. And isn't, the last one more is a personal gripe I have with the way it's presented than an actual accessibility inclusivity thing. But since I got given the slide in the slide deck, I thought I would talk about it. So this is the first slide. It was one of our infographic slides that we were given, and there was some explanatory text which is the only thing I've removed off this slide, was the actual text, because it wasn't really relevant. And there are 3 issues. The first is the colouring. And the top one is the colouring of the not dressed people. I'm assuming they're supposed to be men, but I'll get onto that in a minute. That dark blue, for a lot of people, myself included, is pretty hard to distinguish from the dark grey behind it. And if you look down at the pink, you'll see that stands out so much more because it's just a brighter colour on a darker colour. This is one of the things that I'm like, because you can see it, especially when I have certain of my filters on it. Some of my filters make it a lot easier to see. One of my filters that I actually use really regularly make it really hard to see this blue-grey. And I think that's really important, that you think about maybe, is this colour combination going to be easy for everyone? Is there a big difference in shade for everyone? Because if there isn't, people will struggle to see it. My point number 2 is, I'm going to phrase as a question, and I'm going to kind of leave it open-ended because I don't have an answer for it. But the question is, where am I in this presentation? In this infographic? I'm non-binary, and yeah, I don't fit in that graphic. I don't identify as male or female. So that's a question about how do we present that in the future. And I don't think that's a question I have an answer to. I don't think that's a question that I know what we need to change. It's more if you're collecting data on people, or if you're presenting data on people, have a think about, is there more than 2 categories? So many times I have to put down my gender as prefer not to say, when I would prefer to say, but you haven't given me an option. And I get lost in data like this. So this bit is like, think about the way you're presenting and try not to exclude people by accident. Because I can guarantee that this infographic, they didn't think about a third option. It might be they don't know people, it might be that they haven't come across it, but we're living in a world where it's getting more common. There's still not many non-binary people, but a lot more people are finding out that it's an option for them. And so try not to exclude us from the way you present things. I think that was my main reason I wanted to talk about side, is because I'm not on it, where most people are. And my third point is, really, are we still using the bathroom signs? It would be really nice if we could, either as a community or as a society, come up with something slightly more inclusive. Why does a dress a woman make? That's the last point. Also, pink for women, blue for boys. Really? Or blue for men? Really? Those are small side bits. Those last 2 bits, if we don't change them, I don't mind. But there are a lot. We have symbols that work. And there are definitely alternative symbols that you could use that become a lot easier to add in a non-binary option. So it'd be really nice if you could maybe think about that in future. But yeah, that's the end of my little segment on please make this more inclusive. On to the next bit. I'm now going to start showing you the bits I use day to day and how that kind of affects the way I interact with the world. I'm going to start with my screen filters. I have 2 main ones I use. I'm going to show you them. And then I'm going to move on to like screen readers and the way I type, which is a little bit weird. So first, screen filters. The bottom left, so all of these pictures are pictures of the lake when it was snowing, like a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago now in the UK. I don't remember. Time is an illusion. At the like really, really close to where I live. So this is all the same picture, and I've just applied a screen filter to it. There is slight fuzziness on most of the pictures because these are pictures I've taken off I've literally taken a picture of my screen to show the screen reader. The camera I used makes everything slightly more yellow, but I used the same camera for all the pictures, and I took them like straight up one after another. So the lighting in the room shouldn't have changed. Nothing else should have changed. This is as close as I'm going to get to be able to show you what difference it makes for me. So bottom left is the original picture. You'll notice this is the most blue picture of any of them. People have asked me when I've shown the slide to a couple people to make sure it made sense. People asked if I put a blue filter on that one to just kind of give you an idea, if you can't see it, of how blue this picture is. And yeah, the one to its right, so in the bottom right, is a much more like, it almost looks like an old film, sort of yellowiness to it. And that is with a blue light filter on it. So blue light filters can help stop migraines and can help prevent eye strain from looking at screens. I highly recommend them for everyone. Please, protect your eyes. Use a blue light filter. You can get them on your computers, on phones. Please use them. That's a blue light filter. It's the sort of change that you might not notice if you are just, it's the sort of change you might not notice if you're just looking at the picture by itself, but it's pretty stark next to the original. We're then going to keep going round in a circle, so we're going to go to the top right picture next. The top right picture is my dyslexia filter. So this is a filter, it's currently on the yellow settings, that's what I'm using at the moment, but this is a filter that kind of shows a lot of yellowness. It makes black on white background, so black text on a white background, easier to read. For me, personally. A lot of dyslexics use this. There is a diagnosable option for if this is actually, or if it's a placebo, but that's a different conversation. I use it, it helps. That kind of, you'll see how much more yellow this is. Now, some screen filters you do actually get an image like that. I recommend finding a screen filter that doesn't get you that. But that bright yellow really helps the black stand out more for me, but it can have the tendency to just wash out pages, so it's a thing I use sparingly, but I do sometimes use. Sometimes the benefits outweigh like the annoyance of it. And then the last picture, which is the one on the top left, which is a much more reddy colour than any of the others. And that picture is when I layer my dyslexia filter on top of my blue light filter, and I don't think it's that red. I think it's more yellow than this, but I'm relying on what my phone said. Obviously I don't see the change that much because I use them a lot. It's a lot more red, and it's still surprising to me. But that just shows how much color can change just by using filters, and just to make you aware that although you might see that bottom blue picture on the bottom left, the original, someone else could see any of these other three just by looking at it on their screen. So even if you're 100% sure that you're not dealing with anyone who's colorblind, people will still might not be seeing it the way you're seeing it. And that's just really important for you to note, because it can get harder. Like, there are certain things that I find really hard to see when I have my filters on, so I have to turn them off, which then makes it hard for me to focus on the screen itself. So I would, highly recommend just think about colouring, and hopefully this shows you one of the reasons why, beyond people being colourblind and avoiding those specific colours, this should show you why it might be an issue to have colours determine everything, because occasionally I just can't differentiate between like blues and greens because I have a very yellow filter on that day. And that's all I have to say about screen filters. Next, we're going to move on to screen reader. Now, this, I'm going to show you a very quick video. It's going to show the screen. It's going to have the screen reader in it. It's going to start with the, you're going to start by hearing just what the screen reader reads out. It's 2 hashtags followed by 2 pictures in a Word document, which is why it's got some of the bits about what you can move in the picture formatting. And then I'm going to show you the document. I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to talk a little bit about what you just heard. I'm going to press play, and I'm just going to show you how to get to alternative text and how to mark a picture as decorative. I'll then probably pause the video again, talk about why you should mark things as decorative, and then I'll play and I'll show you what I see when I use a screen reader, because obviously I'm looking at my screen, I can see. So I use a screen reader as something, I use screen reader as a sighted person. This is just to try and give you an idea of what you might hear from a screen reader.
Hash fitness might at hand's word. Hash the pen is mightier than the sword. Blank. Page 1 page, picture 1, image, in line with text, layout options, text wrapping and positioning, available, selected. 2 Egyptian geese in the snow by a partially frozen lake, image, in line with text, selected.
Cool, let's pause. So, the first 2 hashtags you heard were actually the same hashtag. You're going to hear them again in a minute, but this is the main reason why you should capitalize words in hashtags. Now, with this particular hashtag, as a dyslexic person, the second and the third word look like one word to me, which again is probably not the message you want to give if you're using this hashtag. So capitalizing words isn't just for screen readers. It can also help dyslexic people or people who have difficulty reading or to really understand what the hashtag is. You'll notice in absolutely everything I've done, I've capitalized words, including in my URL, just because it makes it easier for me to read what's going on, and I know it will make it easier for other people to read. So next what's going to happen is I'll talk you through as we go, but it's going to show you how to add alternative text to that first picture where you couldn't hear what the picture was. So I've right-clicked and then clicked Edit Alt Text, and then you can add a description in there. You can tell it to generate a description. I marked it as decorative so you can hear the difference in a minute. I'm going to pause it before I start the screen recorder again. And sometimes you should mark a picture as decorative. If that picture isn't adding any information to your slide or to what you're doing, marking it, and you know the marking as decorative process works on what you're using, and that's a thing that I know occasionally I've tried it and it's not, and like my screen reader hasn't picked up on the fact that I marked that thing as decorative, so I stopped in that particular software. I know in Microsoft stuff, it like has worked every time I've done it. So mark something as decorative if you don't need, if a person looking at the side, if it doesn't provide information, think about marking it as decorative. The laptop outline from the previous slide, I probably would mark as decorative because it's pretty, but it's not actually adding any information to the slide. Right, and then we're going to listen again, and this time you're also going to get to see what it's like using a screen reader, and see kind of how it all works. So I'm turning the screen reader back on.
Hash fitness might at hand's word. Hash the pen is mightier than the sword. Blank. Page 1 page, decorative, image, in line with text, layout options, text wrapping and positioning, available, selected. 2 Egyptian geese in the snow by a partially frozen lake, image, in line with text, layout options, text wrapping and positioning, available, selected.
So you can hear that when it says decorative, it tells the person, oh, there's an image here, but it's not providing information. It's just decorative. I can move on. And sometimes if you have images that are just there to be pretty, something that helps. Sometimes I enjoy putting the description in because I'm like, actually, this doesn't provide loads of information, but I feel like it gives a tone to the piece that I've done. And so I want to include that alt text. It's a bit of a grey area, but like, you don't have to alt text everything if it's decorative. Please don't alt text everything if it's decorative. Because remember, a screen reader is going to read every single thing that you don't. If you mark it as decorative, sometimes the screen reader will just skip over it. But I know that if you don't mark it as decorative, I'm going to hear it 100 times. I'm going to hear that same image description, especially if it's a repetitive image, because it's like a logo you put on just to water stamps, like mark that it's you. I don't need to hear that 100 times. I don't need to know you put your logo on every slide. Really? So I think for me it's frustrating. I know other people might have other experiences, and this is one thing that I think you need to go talk to people who use screen readers and ask them, is it helpful if I alt text everything, or would you rather I mark this as decorative? But yeah, please, if you get one thing out of this, it's put all text where it's necessary, and capitalize your hashtags, please. But yeah, so next I'm going to show you a little bit of some of the ways I type. The first one, I'm going to do an example using Windows Ink. So I use Windows... yeah, that's right. I use Windows Ink on my desktop computer. So the screen that is below the camera is a pen screen. So it's not actually a touch screen. It's very similar though. So I Windows Ink on this. But then if I have to do longer pieces of typing, I tend to do Dragon. And so Windows Ink is really, really helpful. You will notice on this next slide, I forgot to turn off one of my colour filters, so it's going to look very yellow, and apologies, but I didn't want to re-record it. So first I'm going to look at Windows Ink. So you'll notice in the bottom I have turned on the touch keyboard on my computer, and I flip it to Windows Ink. It also means I occasionally have a keyboard up, and obviously when I recorded this I had a keyboard up the day. But this, I'm just handwriting straight in, and you'll notice it's got word suggestions at the top. So if I can't get it to pick up what word I want, or I've typed something slightly wrong, it normally gives me a word suggestion. Occasionally it will get it wrong, and I'll just backspace, rewrite in the right letter. Or if you have a rubber function on your pen, you can just use the rubber function on here. And it's not the quickest, but this is normally quicker than me typing. And I normally use this as when I'm scrolling the internet, or when I'm editing a piece I've done Dragon on. This is one of the things I will use. You can see I'm just describing what I do. I also, if you don't want big fancy screens, but want to do this on desktop computers, I highly recommend getting yourself a small drawing tablet. You can get them kind of cheap, and that's what I started on before I upgraded to a big screen, because I realised I was using it so much I wanted to invest a bit more and make sure it was easier for me. But honestly, the tablet I started on made me so much faster at writing and getting work done, and made it that I actually enjoyed doing that work and enjoyed doing that writing, which is something I haven't done in years. When I started uni, I hated writing long pieces because it was so much effort to sit down and type. I have dyspraxia. I don't know where my hands are. Really cool feature I just saw is that I just then, I don't know if you spotted it, wrote over the word that had gone wrong, and just like it had done an M rather than an R and an N. So I just literally wrote an R over part of the M, and it swaps the letters. And it's little features like that that make Windows Ink so intuitive to use. But yeah, my dyspraxic means I don't know where my fingers are, so it means that I really struggle to type, because unless I'm looking at the keyboard, I don't know where my hands are. because I can't see them. Also, it takes me a long time to process what letter is what and like read a letter. So that just kind of slows everything down, whereas I have more experience handwriting. I know this will be different for other people. There'll be people who got taught to type a lot younger than I did. And like for them, typing might be faster, but for me, this works wonders. But yeah, you'll notice in this bit, there's a bit where the spacing is a bit weird. I normally would, once I've typed everything, maybe go back and actually with my keyboard go in and just do the where they are and work it out. There's little bits of changing I've done to my writing, like using the hats on eyes and doing one slightly differently because I just know it picks it up slightly better. That was me trying it. There we go. And you'll notice occasionally it doesn't pick it up quite right, but it's intuitive and it feels right and it feels like it works. I press enter and that text is all then basically locked in, and there isn't many spelling mistakes in there. There's no slips of fingers. It's all mostly what I wanted to type, and also it's really easy to edit as I go along. I'm now going to show you a dragon demonstration, and that it's a lot harder to edit as I go along, I find. So I often will leave, when I'm using dragon for longer text, we'll do a lot with dragon and then just leave it and come back with Windows Ink and edit it with Windows Ink. Or depending on what mistakes I have, if there's only a couple, I'll come back and edit it with my keyboard. But my keyboard half the time isn't even plugged into my computer, so it depends if I can find it. But yeah, we'll now move on to that demo. So next I'm going to demonstrate me using dragon and showing you the little bits you have to remember to add when you're using speech to text, like I do. So first I'm just going to turn dragon on. Cool. So dragon should now, oh no, it's not gonna, you need to tell dragon where you're typing. Full stop. Dragon is now typing what I say when I say it. Full stop. You'll notice that as I type, I'm leaving out any commas or anything other than full stops, because this makes it easier as I'm typing. Scratch that. Typing. Full stop. Sometimes when I tell it to go back and take out words, I will leave bits out, and really this is just to get my ideas down on paper faster. It isn't necessarily the final result coming straight out of dragon. Full stop. The sentences often end up being a little bit longer because I forget to finish them, or it mishears words but I look at it and I'm like, I'll be able to work out what that word is in a minute when I come back. Full stop. The reason dragon is so much more accurate than other screen readers for me is that it is trained to listen to my voice and my accent, but also trained in the way I write and in the style that I do words. Full stop. It can analyse my emails and documents I've written. Scratch that. Scratch that. Can analyse emails or documents that I've written and gets used to the way I write. Full stop. When I'm finished typing, I can just say microphone off, and it turns the microphone off. Full stop. Microphone off. And it stops. And then afterwards, I normally would go back, adjust little bits where it misunderstood me, but this is faster. This is the fastest way I can write words. And especially when I'm writing long pieces, my brain tends to get ahead of my handwriting, but when it doesn't get ahead of my speaking as much. So it means that long documents, suddenly I can write paragraphs easily. I just would have to say like new line, and it starts a new line. Also, it works out in context whether I mean the word I just said as a command. Like I said microphone off twice in there, and it didn't turn the microphone off because it was part of the sentence. And that really helps. So yeah, that's a little demonstration of using speech to text. You can see if I was trying to put in all the punctuation, which I know I did at the start, it can be so much slower. But also, this version isn't what people are going to see. Speech to text isn't, it's the first thing I do, and then I go back and I use Windows Ink to edit normally. I'll first of all like handwrite on this, highlight it, get my head around what I wanted to say, whether it sounded right, and then I would go back and actually edit the words. So I use this in conjunction with other things. This isn't the only way I type, and this isn't done in isolation. So yeah, that's Dragon. So finally, what this tells the answer, but one of the best examples I have seen come out in ages, is these. So these are the Go Fly Ease Nike trainers that are supposed to be coming out later this year. This is an advertisement. Other trainers are available, but these are the only pair of trainers you do not need to bend down or tie shoelaces to get into. As a dyspraxic person who still can't tie shoelaces, and occasionally has knee issues, from my muscles being weird, these are going to change a lot of what I do. Currently, I break a lot of the back of my shoes because like someone like my sister or my mum will tie my shoelaces once, and then I will just slide my feet into the shoes and break them over time. But this really is putting accessibility first. You don't get to this pair of trainers by the end of a project going, oh, what about accessibility? These were partially designed by or I believe he was in the team, was a guy with cerebral palsy. And when you have somebody who needs the thing in your team, you'll find accessibility a lot easier to implement. Because suddenly you have someone being like, no, that doesn't work. No, that's not good enough. We will do better. And it's not about being perfect, because if everyone just does a little bit better, everyone will keep trying to do better, to stay ahead of competition. These I am very excited to get a pair later in the year, when they finally are on the market. But this really is accessibility first. There's no other way to get to trainers like this, and we can do that with what we do. It's not impossible to put accessibility first as anybody. The next project you do, think about accessibility at the start, and you'll find it comes so much easier in the project. So, very quickly, in the last little bit I have, what can you do? First of all, capitalise your words in hashtags. Please. It would really help. And it really makes a difference to people who are using screen readers or people who struggle to read. Second, alt text your pictures. If you alt text your pictures, when I know the document's just for me, as a habit, I have got into alt texting my pictures so that if I happen to be using a screen reader on a day, I just don't get the word image 50 times. But also it's really helpful to use it as kind of a note system. And if you write good descriptions and you get practiced at it, it will become second nature. And then on a day when that document does end up in front of someone who needs alt text, they'll be thanking you because it makes life a lot easier. Next is to start with accessibility. Don't let accessibility fall to the background and become at the end. And it doesn't really matter what you're doing. Even if you're doing videos, you're like, accessibility is like an add-on because of subtitles or any description you're going to put in. You can put in a description of what you're seeing as you see it on screen, as you know that it's going to come up. Because suddenly, it doesn't matter if someone can see what you're doing or not. They can understand it by hearing you. Next is subtitling videos. Subtitling videos is kind of the minimum I would expect from someone doing a video who wants their content to be inclusive. Transcripts or blogs to go with your videos, again, help because you're giving it access to people who learn differently. I don't learn well from blogs, I learn well from videos. I also know a lot of people who learn well from blogs and can't learn from a video. And knowing that those two groups exist, if you can provide content to both of them, you're suddenly opening the market to so many more people seeing what you do and being able to share in the ideas. And the last two are kind of points of... I'm going to go to the last point and then come back to the second last one. So the last point is using the accessibility checker. The accessibility checker is in every single Microsoft thing. It's a little button that, if I remember, I'll put on this slide because I forgot to do it originally. Is a little button that you can just click and it will tell you what's not accessible in that document you've done. It will help you work out where all text is. It will tell you about things in PowerPoint like slide orders and reading orders that you probably don't know about. I don't. I use accessibility tools, and it means that I know Microsoft have had my, like, it's Microsoft kind of having your back and being like, look, here are some accessibility issues. And yeah, you probably can go further than that, but starting with that means that you know your content's going to be at least accessible to somebody. And it's at least going to have a head start on people who don't. Accessibility is going to make a difference because suddenly more people can see what you do and can interact with what you do. But lastly, ask people, talk to people, come find people. If you're like, okay, I'm not sure what I've done is good for dyslexic people, ask dyslexic people. If you're really struggling if you're like, I'm not sure if this works for a screen reader, either go open Windows Narrator and try it yourself, or go find someone who uses a screen reader. Like, you can become an expert in working out what works for this. You might not be as good at using that accessibility tool as someone who has to use it day to day, but using it, you might just notice things and be like, oh, this is really annoying. I can change that. The more people we get shouting about accessibility, whether you think you need it or not, the more change we can make and the better world we can make it for all of us. So one last time I want to say thank you to our 6 sponsors who are letting us do this conference. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, tweet at me, find me on the internet and message me. You can find me on Twitter at dyspraxic. And yeah, don't worry. Try your best and just keep trying harder because I'm still having to try harder. I still know I'm not doing a perfect job and there's always something to improve on. But as I said earlier, my blog I know isn't perfect right now and I'm working on it. And I think for me it's important to have it out before it was perfect and just work on it as I go because it can show the difference. And keep going. No one's gonna hate you because you're not perfect. Just if someone's like, oh, do this to be more accessible, try it. Because it probably will work to be more accessible if someone's asking for it. But thank you for listening. And yeah, tweet at me. Ask me questions. Bye.